Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail C. Martin, and tonight we are talking about the must-watch episodes of Season 1. Now, there's a lot to talk about, and we might hit every episode, who knows, except those two, and maybe even them. But before we get into it, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Kensing, and I have been a Supernatural fan since the beginning. I saw the first couple seasons, and took a break somewhere, I don't know, in the middle, but then came back to it and finished out. I'm also a writer and have dabbled in some fanfic a little bit, and am just generally a big fan.
Okay, Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I've been a Supernatural fan since season 3, started writing fanfic in 2012, and I love coming on continual panels and talking about Supernatural.
Very good. Susan.
Hi, I am Susan Griffith, one half writing team of the Clay and Susan Griffith team. We write historical fantasy. I too have dabbled in fan fiction, and I have also watched Supernatural from the beginning, but like the other contestant, I have also taken a break and then came back, but loved every minute of it. So it's been great to talk about it here on Continual.
All right, Hansi.
I'm Hansi Oppenheimer at Squee Projects. I'm a documentary filmmaker and mostly study pop culture and fandom. And yeah, Supernatural was, one of those fandoms that I just fell right in. I mean, I think I met Lynn online at Wizard World and commented on her shirt. I think she had a Firefly shirt on. We then fangirling and Supernatural, it's my world. It's such a good place to be.
Sue.
I am Sue Ashworth, and I've been there since the beginning. I'm also able to check for the fanfic. Wrote my first around episode 3, I think, and haven't stopped since.
Very good. Lynn.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Zubernis. I'm a psychologist and a professor at Westchester University. Fandom and the psychology of fandom is actually what I study. So I've written 6 books on fandom, many of them focusing on Supernatural. The last 2 have chapters by both the Supernatural actors and fans. Family Don't End with Blood and There'll Be Peace When You Are Done. I also started watching Supernatural from the beginning, and unlike a few other people, I just never managed to even take a break. So I have been watching Supernatural for a very long time.
And I'm Gail C. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But all of my modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I didn't discover the show until halfway through season 11, but I made up for it in binge watching 11 seasons in less than 4 months to be ready for the start of season 12, and went down the rabbit hole at that point and never came back up. I run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook. I'm a columnist for the Winchester Family Business blog. I wrote a chapter in There'll Be Peace When You Were Done, and I'm just, generally obsessed with the show. So I think we can all agree on that, but I'm happy here, so I'm just going to stay. So season 1, which was not my original portal to the show, saying, hey, this thing is halfway through its 11th season. Let's watch a few episodes and see what it's like. Because that always makes a whole lot of sense in Supernatural world. But for most people, they start at the beginning. So let's go around, give us each your must-watch season 1 episode. And don't worry, we'll do several rounds, so you'll get to several of them. Now, unlike Entertainment Weekly, this doesn't necessarily have to be an important episode to understand the plot for the season. It doesn't necessarily have to be a big character episode. It's your favorite must-watch. Rainy, crappy day, I'm going to sit down and watch Supernatural. Which episode from season 1 do you pick? Anna?
Route 666, the racist truck episode.
Wow, that's not one most people pick as a favorite.
Right? It's not. I think that this episode, although not the one that most people pick as as a favorite, tells us so much about Dean, because we're still sort of early-ish in the season. We've seen him be this sort of like swaggery, self-confident, competent hunter who loves them and leaves them, and never lets anything get underneath his skin. And it comes to find out that the touchy, no touchy-feely, I don't hug, no chick flicks macho persona is not really all that there is to Dean. Sam also finds out that his Casanova of a big brother not only has a heart, but had it broken by a girl. He told Cassie, the girl in the show who is, the victim, or, the person that they're there to help, that he told her the secret. Sam is appalled. Sam has spent his entirety of college not telling Jess everything about the secret. Rule number one, the family rule number one, we do what we do and we shut up about it. And Dean told this girl everything. He's shocked. He's confused. And Dean did it because he fell in love, right? Like he told her everything. He told her all of his secrets, and she didn't believe any of it. And it hurt him really, really deeply. And I mean, the whole racist truck storyline, it's a monster of the week story, but I really think that this episode in particular just gives us so much more insight into this character than we would have expected to. We thought that we knew who he was, and I think that this episode shows us that there's way more to Dean than we ever thought that there was.
Okay, Carole.
I have to go with Something Wicked. I absolutely love Something Wicked. It's the first one where we get some flashbacks of Sam and Dean as children, where John thinks nothing of leaving them in a hotel room. Dean, watch out for your brother. An adorable tiny Sammy wants Lucky Charms for dinner, and Dean has to struggle with, being the big brother and having to suck it up when he doesn't get what he wants. So we see them in that phase of their lives, and we see a monster of the week that gone bad, which John then makes Dean feel guilty about, like, for the rest of his life. Hence the tag of John Winchester A+ parenting that you see on AO3. But they have returned to the scene of the crime and are fighting that same monster of the week again. So you have this great two-story telling of the present, where the boys are fighting this monster, and then the past, where their father was fighting the monster. And but Sam finds out. We see Dean trying to give him, the best life he can, up into including stealing Christmas presents for him. It's really packed so much into one episode, and I absolutely adore it.
Okay, Susan.
My favorite is the one I'll always watch, no matter what time it's on, even if I caught the last 5 minutes of it, I'm going to tune in. Is Faith, only because it's a Dean episode. It's the first time we really see the lengths the brothers will go to for each other, and that really hit me so hard, and that's when I knew that the show was for me.
That the one with all the Reapers?
Say again?
That the one with all the Reapers?
Yeah, that's the first time you see a Reaper that comes in. You see Darla from Buffy come in as the woman who's struggling with her disease. Yeah, so it hit a lot of boxes for me, both nostalgia wise, but also character wise. I really love seeing that Dean is ready to just go off into the sunset. He's done his duty. He's damaged. He's fine. I'm just going to go with it. And then you see Sam go bonkers, basically trying to find every solution, to reach out to a holy, medicine tent to try and save his brother. And those kind of little tidbits that you got glimpses of, that's going to carry on through the rest of the season, where you see the brother one after the other trying to save their family, really hit home. And I love the Reaper. That was the first monster that really, death is a constant. To see a new interpretation of it was really kind of cool, and to see that, and to know later that they're going to have like this connection with the Reaper, and Dean will have that carried through. So again, it was just one of those sparks that was about to light up the rest of the series. But for that first moment, seeing it, watching it, and me being a Dean fan and a Hurt Comfort Queen, that was my candy.
Okay, Hansi.
Well, so I watched 9 hours of the first season today. I hadn't watched it since the finale, although I have watched Winchester's. But so going back to it was interesting after break, and the pilot, I was really impressed by how strong the pilot is. I mean, everything that you need to go forward is in that, the shotgun, the whole thing, I mean, they get everything in that first episode laid out so beautifully for what the whole show becomes. Kind of amazing.
Okay, Sue.
I love Asylum, and the reason I love it so much is that it shows a lot of the underlying friction between the two brothers. The plot, everybody knows the plot, but they are looking into a haunted asylum because there have been some problems happening. A guard has gone home and killed his wife, which was not expected by anybody. It seems to be a trope of a regular horror film. They find a couple of teenagers who've broken in, but then whilst they're trying to protect the teenagers, Sam meets up with the cause of all the problems in the asylum, which is the ghost of an evil doctor who kind of strips away his inhibitions and relieves his underlying anger. And that underlying anger causes him to attempt to kill Dean. Dean is obviously expecting it, but it shows that even though the brothers have gotten back together again, they're still settling in. There's a lot of underlying anger between the two of them, and I really like that.
Okay, Lynn.
I probably would have picked the pilot if I was not going sixth, because it feels even more iconic now because of its mirrors with the series finale, which I love. So it's even more powerful now, although it was powerful even then. But I will pick Home, which is one of my other really favorite episodes of season 1, for a couple reasons. We find out a lot about the brothers' history in Home. I always like the episodes where we get glimpses of their history because we don't get a whole lot of it. The show is pretty brilliant in sort of spooling out that information little by little. So we get to know the Winchesters kind of organically, and we get to know them almost as in real time as Sam and Dean are getting to know each other again after being separated for a while, and in some ways getting to know each other in ways that they just never did as kids. There's a scene in this one where Dean talks about what he remembers, why he doesn't want to go back to their home. Sam, of course, doesn't remember anything about them being there, but Dean says, I remember the heat, I remember the fire, and then I carried you out. And Sam kind of goes, "What? You did?" And Dean is like, "What? You never knew that?" That's such a pivotal piece of information. And we find it out in real time as Sam finds it out. And as the brothers are sort of slowly getting to know each other and sort of renegotiating their relationship, I love that in season 1, like every episode, one of them finds out something about the other that they didn't know and we didn't know. And it changes their view of each other little by little over the course of the season. So I love that. I also love, love, love one of the first scenes that really made me see Dean as, you know, so much more than the bravado that he is on the outside, was when he goes around the corner at the gas station and calls John and kind of breaks down and is vulnerable and says, I don't know what to do, Dad. I need you. And he actually gets tearful. And I remember thinking, oh, maybe I had this character wrong. Like there seems to be so much more to this character than I thought there was. And then of course, at the end, we actually get the reveal of John Winchester sitting there talking to Missouri Mosley and not being willing to let his children know that he's alive. And I remember thinking at the time, like, well, what a dick move, John. Like your kids are like so upset and you're not going to tell them that you're okay. I realize he was trying to protect them, but I remember at the time really being like, oh, that doesn't sit well with me. So a lot happened. We saw Mary too in this again. So it really was a very emotional episode for all the stuff that happened and all we found out about their history.
Folks have listed a number of ones that, you know, were on my list. And of course, one of the things I love about Supernatural is that it has all this supernatural stuff in it, because I believe every story is better with a ghost or some sort of magic. But I'm going to mention The Benders, which has no supernatural elements in it at all. And maybe we can blame this on the fact that my parents took me to see Deliverance when I was 10. They had never been to an R-rated movie. They thought maybe they swore a little bit. That was memorable for a lot of reasons. But The Benders is such a cabin in the woods kind of horror movie. And of course, first season shot with film, all that marvelous cinematography. There's a lot of depth. The stage and camera angles are terrific. But I think one of the things about this, we've all been talking about how throughout the series, throughout the first season, Sam and Dean are getting to know each other better, renegotiating, getting close to each other, kind of figuring out the pain points and figuring out how to sort of apologize, or at least get back together again and smooth over the rough spots. And Dean, we really, really understand Dean's take care of Sammy programming in The Benders, because Sam disappears and Dean goes ballistic. And Dean is going to break every rule, break every bone, break every, you know, speed limit to get Sammy back. And we see that moment of candor with Sheriff Kathleen when he finally says, look, you can arrest me and do whatever you want to me, just let's save my brother first. Can we do that? And we see Sam's ingenuity. We see, you know, Sam hasn't been back on the road very long, but he knows how to handle this situation so much better than the guy in the cage next to him. And Sam is trying to figure everything out and trying to break loose and trying to get an idea of what the situation really is instead of panicking. So he reverts to his training. Pardon me. And Dean is leaving no stone unturned. And so even when he wakes up tied to the chair, face down by Psycho Missy, he's playing for time, and he is absolutely going to kill these guys if they lay a hand on Sam. And I think both Jensen and Jared's acting is so superb in this episode, but the tension for not having any woo-woo, for not having any creepy crawlies, for just being plain old evil people, it's a pretty terrifying episode. So not only for what we see in the strengthening bond between the boys, but also for just an excellently written horror episode, I'm going to go with The Benders.
It's
He
more
says,
frightening.
eat me. And he says, eat me. But then he says, no, wait, you probably will.
And let's not forget the wonderful jawbone and tooth wind chime.
And I do love Jessica Steen in that. I mean, her performance was great. I actually wanted her to become a reoccurring character right from the start. She was one of the first few female characters they introduced that I actually kind of bonded with. And then they had a horrific line of women characters that I didn't bond with, but I did like her character a lot. And then it really
Was that
wanted
Sharon
more.
Kathleen?
That was the deputy.
You know,
Yeah.
I kept waiting for her to show up the first time we watched Hibbing 911 because the benders happened in Hibbing and surely she would have been there. But I figure after she found out what happened to her brother, she left law enforcement and she's probably running a cafe in Key West now.
That's what I'm
I
hoping.
hope so.
She's living a good life.
I
Bar,
hope so.
a bar in Key West. Yeah. Okay, Anna, round two.
Okay, so Shadow, which has so much going on here. So we're at the tail end of the season and we're finding out all kinds of revelations. And there are so many layers and layers and layers and layers and layers in this episode. So the whole episode is about the shadows of their lives, of the past, of what's going on, of each of their personalities and the depths to their personalities, the shadow of whatever demon blood Sam has, the shadow of Dean's history with his father. But then there's also sort of, like lighter moments too. I mean, Dean, another episode in here where Dean works fast. He's in town, they're in town less than 36 hours and he's already not only found a nice young woman to have to share an evening with, but she turns out to be a cop and he gets a lot of information out of her. And he's just genuinely has a good time with her. It's not the first time we suspect that Dean has had sex with somebody in order to get information out of them or to further the case. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, how did Dean learn how to do that? Did he do that before? Did Dad suggest that he do that? How young was he the first time that he did that? But on the other hand, he genuinely likes Amy, the cop that he, spends a night with, and actually contacts her later in the episode and gets further information from her. She likes tequila. She's got this little tattoo. They have a fantastic time. And, it sounds like Amy is totally down for whatever. But then he also keeps bringing sex up, Dean does, because he can't seem to stop himself from turning everything into sex. So when they come across Meg Masters in the bar, there's a lot of weirdness going on between Sam and Meg, and Sam sees Meg, but he's confused as to why she's here because they, sort of had a emotional connection before, and she doesn't think very highly of Dean. Sam doesn't introduce her to Dean at first. Dean's like, what am I, chopped liver? So Sam has to sort of constantly redirect his energies. And then there's a weird sexually predatory situation at the end with Meg against Dean and against Sam. And it's just a whole layers and layers and layers of weirdness and the id and your shadow self and all these kinds of things. And then the truly, truly heartbreaking scene between Dean and Sam towards the end of the episode when they're talking about what would happen if they finally kill this thing that killed Mom. And Sam would be able to go back to school and have a life and be a person again. And Dean is just utterly and completely crushed by the notion that, wait, is he not a person? Does Sam not want to be with him? Why would Sam want to abandon him after this? The notion of Dean and family and what that means is not really very healthy, but so heartbreakingly compelling. And then Dad comes back. And Dean is the one who says to Dad, you can't come with us. You will be in danger if you stay with us. And so Dean, despite the fact that he wants to have his family, his weird, screwed up idea of family where none of them have any lives outside of each other, he has to give that up because they're not safe if they are all together, which is in contrast to how they end up deciding that they are stronger together, and that busting up the family is actually what makes the demons and the forces of evil that are aligned against them win. So there are so many literal shadows in the show, and there are so many sort of figurative shadows that are going on, and it's an amazingly deep and layered and complex episode that just really tells the whole arc of the whole show kind of in 48 minutes.
Okay, Carol.
And the Devas are creepy. They're really creepy.
Super creepy.
One of my personal favorites, and it's so fun because it's the one right after my first favorite of Something Wicked, and that is Provenance. I just love Provenance. It's a great monster of the week. The creepy painting, you think it's the dad, it's the creepy little girl. The painting is changing. I just love that the supernatural element of it there is just super chills down your spine. And the lady buys the painting, and then she hears, and the little girl, and it's just really like gothically creepy with the antiques and the painting and the shadows and the old house and all of that. I love it. It's also introduces another great female character that I always wished came back, and not just so that they could kill her in 5 minutes, but to really enjoy her, and that is Sarah Blake. Sarah Blake is completely not blinded and impressed by Dean, but it finds herself very much attracted to Sam. And although Dean has to kind of poke Sam to say, she's attracted to you, so like do something about it. Because he's still kind of, in his haze of grief.
He also tells her to take one for the team, which sort of furthers this, like, how do we get information from women?
Yeah. But they genuinely, Sam and Sarah hit it off, and they go on a very awkward date. But in the end, she's so down to earth, and they have to tell her. It's one of the first times, in fact, I think they reveal the fact that there's this other whole dimension to life, to muggles, that, and she rolls with it. She just rolls with it. And she's practical, and she's level-headed. And I mean, she gets a little spooked, because who wouldn't when you have this haunted little girl with a razor blade, coming after you. But she adapts so well. And you could see her. She what?
Sorry, I've got a cat trying to push my computer off the desk.
And you could just see she really could have become more entwined, with them, or been recurring, or they could have run into her, they could have another time stopped by and see her, whatever. And you understand, why they can't have these relationships and strings and stuff. But she was such a great character that it was a real shame. And, Sam finally does realize there's life after loss, and he's at least able to admit that he is drawn to somebody, and they kiss, and he kind of realizes, I'm going to keep going, and that doesn't mean I'm going to be alone the entire time, always. So between those two elements, I really, really enjoyed it. It comes down to having to torch the doll, and that was a really great little creepy element. I think Dean is even like, why do they do things like that? That's just gross. But yeah, it makes a great double header with Something Wicked. So Provenance is way up there on my list of favorites.
And a quick side note, we also get some insights in Provenance into what Sammy learned when he was away at college, because the way he handles himself on that date is not Dean going out with a girl to the diner. This is somebody who knows how to sit in a white tablecloth restaurant and order off a nice menu and order a bottle of wine. and the whole knowledge about Providence and how he can talk to her. We see how Sammy grew and learned outside of the hunter community, and now he's brought that back. But that's another interesting juxtaposition there, because, oh yeah, you did go away for a few years and get out of the life and brought some things back with you, didn't you? Susan?
Oh, you guys picked a lot of my ones I had on my list. I'm going to go with Dead Man's Blood, just because it had vampires. And if you know me as an author, I am obsessed with vampires. So there's that element that's a new twist on an old monster. And I like the way they kind of introduced the vampires a little bit, and they gave them some new unique foils, like, you know, the dead man's blood, that if a vampire ingests or gets hit with a dead human blood, then they become weak. And I really thought that was a really interesting twist to the mythology. You also get the introduction of the cult, the gun that is going to become so instrumental for a ton of seasons down the road. You get it's the reappearance of John suddenly again, the father, back in the kids' lives when, you know, they really weren't expecting it. And I certainly wasn't expecting it. I thought, okay, John came back and that's done for the season. They won't bring him back till like another season down the road. And also he shows up again, and you get that incredible conversation between him and Sam, and all that anger that Sam has been holding is just spilled over. And there's anger from John too, back at the kids and stuff. So there's a lot of underlying stuff that they're trying to work through in the midst of trying to find the cult, trying to get the vampires. And, you know, dad being the typical dad, don't, you know, you kids stay out of this. I'm going to take care of all this trade with the vampires. And of course, thank God they didn't listen to him, and they come crashing in and save his butt at the end. But I really liked it just because it was unexpected twist to the vampire tale. And that's probably one of my favorites.
And of course, the vampire they let get away turns out to be very important. Man,
Yes.
should have gotten her. They should have capped her while they could.
Yeah.
Because it comes back to bite them in the butt, as everything does with the Winchester. Hansi?
I'm gonna go with a weird one. I think Hell House, because I really love the whole meta thing where you have the show within the show. I think that's really interesting. And they also managed to have like funny, compassionate, and really scary. Like, it's really creepy. That guy's, you know, the ghost is creepy as hell, you know, and birthday party thing, it's all so creepy. But they managed to all that in such a way that it was very interesting. And I liked Ghost Facers, you know, I love those guys. That's there, and it's always really fun.
Okay. So
It always surprised me just how many recurring characters were spawned in the first season.
Mhm.
That just keep coming back.
Yeah. Sue?
For me, going back to the beginning and Bloody Mary, we all played it when we were kids. We all knew about it, and it was really interesting to see the show's take on it. What really excites me about Bloody Mary is the way the director caught all the images, all the ways that Bloody Mary was reflected in windows, in mirrors, in barely seen things all the way through. The cinematography of it is so clever. And of course, it reveals that Sam has secrets. It also, you know, it reveals that Dean has secrets. Doesn't reveal what the secrets are, but it sets things up so that we're waiting to find out what those secrets are.
Very good. Lynn?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too. I think that is still, even after 15 episodes of the show, Bloody Mary is probably the one that scared me the most. I remember watching it with my daughter, and both of us, when she crawled out of that mirror, like in the ring, the two of us were just like, ah! I mean, just screamed at the top of our lungs. So yeah, that's a really good one. I'm going to go with Dead in the Water is one of my very favorites. It's talk about a cinematic masterpiece. It's the first Kim Manners directed episode, so it has a soft spot in my heart because of that. And it's so scary, that beginning opening where the young lady goes swimming alone in the water and we see her from below and you know something's going to happen and then she gets pulled down. I thought that was terrifying. The scene where the son gets pulled into the sink and you see him reach his hand down the drain and you're screaming, no, why would you do that? Don't do that. And then sure enough, and then Andrea in the tub and she's got her eyes closed and you see the water start going brown and I mean, it is just a masterpiece of horror. So I like it for that, but it's got a lot of, it's always the ones that have insight into the brothers that I'm going to love the most. And this is the episode where, again, we start to see another side of Dean. And again, Sam starts to see another side of Dean because Dean really connects to the little boy, Lucas, so much so that he kind of instinctively gets down on his level to talk to him, which is, I do play therapy with kids sometimes as a therapist. Right away, you want to get down on their level. Dean instinctively does that. He bonds with Lucas over the little army men that Dean says, oh yeah, I used to play with these, which of course, when you go back and watch it now, you think of the little army men in the Impala. So it has extra added resonance and Dean really empathizes with Lucas. And then again, as he's talking to Lucas, Sam is also hearing this conversation and he starts talking about how he was traumatized when his mother was killed because he also saw it just like Lucas saw his father be killed, and talks about, I didn't want to talk for a long time either. And the Kim Manners goes back to focus on Sam listening to that and looking in the door like, what? I never thought about, as a child, you don't think about your brother's experience because you were a child yourself, and really realizing for the first time, whoa, he really went through a trauma here that's different than the kind of trauma that I went through. And yet he really has true empathy for this child. I think of him as somebody who just wants to go out and get laid and doesn't empathize with children, but here he is really empathizing with children. So I love that. And it's also, I mean, the whole series is so much about loss and grief, but this is one of the first episodes that really looks at that in what happened, with the grandfather and this long history and how he eventually sacrifices himself to save his grandson. But he's such a broken man by that time because of all the loss and the grief. So it's a really deep episode for also being such an amazing horror episode.
Well, I'm going to pick a less popular one and go with Wendigo. Wendigo gets a lot of shade. I think it's hard to come off such an amazing episode like the pilot and measure up. But some of the things I like about Wendigo, in the pilot, it was super creepy and they were fighting a ghost. Wendigo's the first time we see them go up against a corporeal monster, one that they really, it's got teeth and claws. And the boys aren't quite back in sync with each other yet, and they aren't in sync with each other as adults, so they're still learning. There's what's familiar, and then there's who they are now, and they're trying to get in that groove. And we see, despite all the things that Sam is wrestling with at the moment, losing Jess, does he really want to be hunting monsters, all of these things, when it comes down to protecting the civilians, you've got Sam effing Winchester blocking the road and putting the people behind him and coming through like a, damn fighter. And so, we see Sam growing into that role. We see Dean really latching on to this idea of saving people, hunting things, the family business. I think Dad wants us to do this. Sure, Dad isn't here, but he sent us and we can do this. And Dean's lighting up with this how to keep Sammy with him, how to keep this going. And you can see that hopefulness in his eyes. And so I know that Wendigo gets shade because maybe the creature isn't scary enough, or the special effects weren't scary enough, but I like it because of those aspects. Well, folks, we have time for one more quick round, and even that won't run us out of episodes, so there will be a few unlucky few left at the end, but quick round here on, give us another one. Anna?
Phantom Traveler. So we get the camera panning up Dean's sleeping body, which apparently caused a viewer to graph the Ackles ass equation on a graphing calculator. So kudos. We get the first appearance of the Fed suits. We have Dean going to a copy shop to make an ID for Homeland Security, which was new at the time, which just indicates how old we all are. And Dean catches on real quick to what the possessing demon really wants. The possessing demon wants to finish the job because Dean is all about finishing the job. But in the end, it's Sam who completes the job, saves his brother, saves the plane, saves the passengers, finishes the job. We also find out Dean's weakness, that he's afraid of flying, that he's not afraid of vampires or ghosts or demons or poltergeists or wendigos or anything, but he's afraid to fly. And he has to hum Metallica in order to keep himself calm on the airplane.
Which is just not necessarily the most hummable band in the world.
I don't know, I do telecom all the time myself, so I get it.
Okay, Carole.
I'm going to go with the finale for the season, Devil's Trap. Everything that has been building up all season comes together. We see this great scene where John and the boys have retreated to some remote cabin and have this big showdown because John is actually possessed by a demon and is trying to get the boys to kill their father if he doesn't kill Dean first. And Dean's getting all shredded up, and Sam has to choose. Is he going to be with his father or is he going to go with Dean? And he goes with Dean. And you just know it by the fact he takes that one little step back and you realize he made his choice and it's Dean. And so it's a really, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of tension, all these threads coming together. And then it ends in that final, they're racing off in the Impala, got to get Dean to a hospital because he's like really not in good shape. And the demon possesses a truck driver and T-bones the Impala. And all the people who watched it live had to spend all summer waiting to see what happened. So it was a really a crushing finale, if you wanted to say. Very suspenseful, ended in a bang. A lot of intensity and then some really good rockin' sockin'.
Okay, Susan.
That was going to be my choice. I think if I had to choose another one, it would probably be Skin. Just first of all, that was the most creepiest thing. I think that was the first time I actually just got grossed out on television. We just watching the skin peel off. That was just horrific to me. I love the thought that it was, that he'd taken over Dean's body, and we're faced with this murdering Dean that's going around trying to kill people and doing so as well. And the thing that was interested me, other than the fact that whole thing between him and Sam and the whole fight, and I was just wondering how is Sam going to be able to figure this out. But at the end that's really interesting to me is that Dean's labeled a murderer even though he's dead. How did he ever cover that up? To me, that was like one of the first faux pas. But I look back on it now going, that's hilarious. But it just always was like, okay, how did they, he still is using his name throughout the next 12 seasons, and yet nobody's put it two and two together. Like, wait, this guy is declared dead over here in wherever it was, I think Missouri.
He's declared dead first time. I mean, they get used to it. Hansi?
Well, I just want to follow that thought, because the one thing that's like so weird to me is that no one ever says like the band or, like when it's that's always, Nigel, whatever from Spinal Tap, or they're always using and nobody's ever like, isn't that like, especially when they do like two guys in the same band. But yeah, not want to pull threads on that. But I think I was watching Bug today, and yes, I know everyone hates it, but I think it's the first time one mistakes them as a couple. And I thought that was interesting. The beginning.
Sue?
Gonna go with Nightmare, and I really like Nightmare for the gloom, also for the fact that Sam's powers were not just touched on, but they really came full force with his visions, and then his ability to move that desk out of the way to go and rescue Dean. I wish that they'd actually done more with that. They seemed to abandon it after that episode, but that episode was full of jump scares, and I like the jump scares.
Okay, Lynn.
Well, I'll go with Scarecrow because nobody has gone with Scarecrow yet. Although I liked a lot of the ones that people went with. That's another Kim Manners episode. Kim Manners episodes are truly always some of my favorites. They are always truly scary. That Scarecrow, I feel like, shouldn't have been nearly as scary as it is. It was literally just looked like a scarecrow, but the way he filmed it, like the initial time we see it as it slowly turns its head to kind of follow that young couple, and then Dean, who, just not afraid of anything, climbs right up there and gets right in its face and is sassy with it. The whole time I was like, get down, run away, run away. I think just Kim Manners does that like so incredibly well. So I like the horror part of it, but once again, I also like what's going on between the brothers, because this is one of the episodes where their differences and their different points of view about should they be trying to find their dad, should they be going on other cases, why is their dad not being more cooperative and cluing them into what's really going on, that really kind of comes between them, and they have that big blowout where Sam gets out of the car and leaves, and Dean says, if you leave, I'm going to leave your ass. And Sam says, well, that's what I want you to do. They're such brothers, they're such siblings. But it was also really heartbreaking at the time to see that, because I was already invested in their relationship. So what do you mean you're going to leave Sam behind on the road? And then interestingly, and I feel like this evolution maybe happened too fast because they backed off on it, but Dean actually, after they've been separated and both looking at their phones, like wanting to call the other, Dean finally kind of says to Sam, look, I'm proud of you. You should be able to live your own life. I mean, and Sam is sort of dumbfounded, but after Dean, like so often with humans, after Dean gives him the permission to kind of go his own way, Sam realizes, wait a minute, my brother hasn't picked up his phone, and actually this is what I care about, and I'm going after him. So Sam comes and saves the day. So it moves their relationship forward in a big way. And at the end, Dean says, can I drop you off somewhere? And Sam says, I think you're stuck with me. And then Dean tries to do the hold me, Sam. That was beautiful, no chick flick moments thing. But I feel like it moved their relationship forward quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm just going to add to what Hansi said about Bugs. I know Bugs is kind of the episode that even the show makes fun of later. And rightfully so in some ways, but there are some important things we see in it that it doesn't always get credit for. For one thing, at the end, Sam admits to Dean that maybe John did a couple of things right, that he doesn't, and Dean gets this insight that Sam doesn't just have this unreasoning hatred for their father, that there were things he was angry about, but Sam has grown up enough to look at his father as a flawed human being, and that's a big growth step. Some of the other things that I like about the show honestly come from knowing more about what happened behind the scenes. I've interviewed Carrie Genzel, who had to deal with all those spiders, and the spider wrangler, and having to have those spiders on her and not smush them because they're rented spiders. And they have to give the spiders back. Having to do more than one scene with the rented spiders that she can't just squish, which I just think is hysterical. And then finding out that, you know, they made Jared and Jensen deal with real bees and get stung and deal with that, only to find out that none of it shows up. So they had to put CGI bees in anyhow. And Jensen was a little salty telling that story for obvious reasons. And then, you know, just, it's one of the episodes that has some very rare miscues in the cinematography, like the time of day and how long night lasts. And there were some head scratchers there, which really Supernatural doesn't do much of, but it happened in that episode. So for all those reasons, I just think, you know, Bugs declares needs an honorable mention in here.
Also, Dean wrapped in a towel with the towel wrapped around his hair in the steam shower because
it's all good. It's all
Yes,
good.
we need his obsession with water pressure.
Well, folks, we have gone through our time. So very quickly, please go around and let everybody know where we can find you online. Anna?
you can find me at annakensing.com and on most of the social media places. My participation waxes and wanes depending on how much I'm procrastinating writing, but also including on TikTok at Anna Kensing Books.
Okay, Carol.
I'm here on Facebook in the TFWNC group and on Continual as Firesign10. You can find me on Instagram and all my fic on AO3. And I'm also co-host of So Get This, the Lore of Supernatural fanfic, available on Spotify. And as Ellis Colton, I'll be publishing my first male-male romance fic, contemporary fiction this summer.
Very good. Susan.
You can find Clay and I at clayandsusangriffith.com. You can find me occasionally on social media. Clay is much more active. You can find him at, you know, Clay Griffith on Facebook mainly. He doesn't do Instagram or anything, but I try and piggyback on some of that on Instagram, but mainly on Facebook. You can find us on our homepage.
Okay, Hansi.
My company is Squee Projects, and I have a website, squeeprojects.com, and I'm on everything, TikTok, Instagram as Squee Projects, and Facebook and all that.
Very good. Sue.
I'm Candygram on social media. That's Twitter, AO3, etc. And you can find my fan fiction on AO3.
Very good. Lynn.
You can find me on all social media at Fangasm SPN. My website is fangasmthebook.com, and you can find the books with chapters written by Jared, Jensen, Misha, and the rest of the Supernatural actors at peacewhenyouaredone.com.
And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on all social media platforms. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group. I am a columnist for the Winchester Family Business. I wrote a chapter for There'll Be Peace When You Are Done. But most of all, you can find me here on Continual. So thanks to all of you for being wonderful, wonderful panelists. And thanks to everybody for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon. So we'll see you online.